But there's a huge mental piece to it too. And if you got the mental piece dialed in, I believe you can just, you can cross a lot off your bucket list.
Welcome to the Crossing It Off podcast, where we believe living with intention through a bucket list lifestyle is a great way to bring yourself personal joy. As you are crossing items off your list, you're actually filling up your bucket. The more items you cross off, the more joy gets added, until eventually your joy spills over into the lives of those around you. Now let's start crossing it off together. Have you ever thought to yourself, it's too late for me to start a bucket list? Or have you ever thought to yourself, it's too early for me to start a bucket list? Well, the time is right now for you to do whatever it is you want to accomplish that will bring you joy. Today's bucket list storyteller is all about this. We're going to learn how she seizes the day and crosses things off her bucket list. So let's start crossing it off. At this time, I want to welcome my guest, Kate Champion. She describes herself as an explorer, author, nature lover, and psychotherapist. Kate, thanks for coming to the show.
Yes, thanks, Roger. Thanks for having me.
So what did you cross off your bucket list?
I backpacked 100 miles on the Superior hiking trail.
Okay. So that's a pretty lengthy trip, I suppose, but I'm not familiar with the Superior hiking trail. So can you describe what that is, where it is?
Yeah, so it's actually a really awesome trail, and it runs from the other side of Duluth, right, which is in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
So it starts about 50 miles the other side of Duluth, and it goes all the way up by the lake, all the way up to the Canadian border. It's
So
about 350 miles or so in total
in
length.
total. Okay. But you just did 100.
I did 100. A lot of people do that trail in sections, and
Sure.
I did 100. Yes. Yep.
So did you do this alone, or was this with a group or with another person?
Yeah, I have a couple of I'm lucky I have a couple of female buddies, backpacking buddies, and we've done a couple of trips together. So they decided to come along with me, which was awesome. It was my goal and my kind of bucket list item, and they wanted the experience as well. So it was nice to have the company.
Yeah, I'm sure. And so you're talking about, I have lots of through hiking things running through my head, but when you talk about backpacking, you packed everything, your tent, your sleeping bag, food.
Yeah, we had everything, and we didn't get off trail once. So it
Oof.
took about 5 days, but it was about 5 nights, 6 days.
Okay.
So we packed everything. The nice thing about that trail is water is really pretty. It's easy to access water. There's water everywhere, so we didn't have to carry and pack a lot of water, but we did 5 days of food, 5 days of snacks,
Mhm.
5 days of, yeah, everything. It was pretty grotty by the end of it, as you can imagine.
Yeah. So what was it that made this on your bucket list? How did this item get there? What drove you to put it on your list?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've always been a runner. I've loved running trails.
Mm.
Then from trail running, I got into kind of hiking, so kind of more endurance hikes. And I did the Allegheny 100. I did 50 miles of the Allegheny 100, which is in Pennsylvania, and it's a kind of endurance race. Right, I forget how many hours. You got 24 hours to do the whole 50 miles. So I did that, and that was solo. Not backpacking, it's more of a staged event, but but it's still a pretty decent hike.
Yeah.
And after that, I was like kind of hooked. And then I got into backpacking for my 55th birthday. I did a beginner's backpacking trip, and then the bug just got me. So, between the endurance events and then adding the backpacking, I just really wanted to get that 100 mile. There was something about that number, and it was like, yeah, that's the next goal for me, is that 100 miles, and I wanted to get it crossed off my bucket list. And the Superior Hiking Trail is actually one of the most beautiful, spectacular trails. You have to look it up if you haven't checked it out. It's an absolute must do. It's got everything. It's got the endurance, it's got the views, it's got the hills. It's just stunning, 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 stunning. And it's totally doable. It's totally doable in sections. You've got a lot of access. You can get dropped off, picked up. If there's an emergency, you have to get off the trail. It's really great. A lot of people use that for a training run for the bigger trails, like the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail. So it was thumbs up, 100%.
Was there anything special you did to prepare for that? You talk about it being like a precursor or a training trail for these other massive through hikes. What did you do for this one for you?
Well, for me, I'd had smaller backpacking trips, so I had really had my gear dialed in. I mean,
Mm,
I was really at weight with the food. I literally time was able to kind of time my meals literally to the last snack, and so really got the food and the weight and the gear dialed in. And so I did that on kind of some of these smaller previous backpacking trips. So that was the big thing. And then just getting the gear dialed in, like the backpacking, shoes and socks is really important,
hmm.
and also fitness wise, getting out on the trail, carrying that back, putting some extra weight, getting some miles under your feet. People think that you have to be this big endurance athlete to do some of these things. And I say, okay, you got to be in somewhat shape, but you don't need to be like Superwoman or Superman. Just get out there, put that pack on, and get those steps in.
The human body is very unique from the standpoint that it adjusts. I think,
Yeah.
I walked the Camino de Santiago and I always on these groups and they're like, oh, how should I train? And, because you're going 18 to 20 miles a day. And I always say, if you can get up to 9 miles a day, you're probably doing okay because you just have to go out there and do it. Your body adjusts to the next level. And, where are you going to, you can't walk 18 miles a day to 18, 20 miles a day just to prepare for that. And so I just tell
That's
people,
true.
if you can get up to 8 or 9 miles a day, just do it. And your body will eventually just adjust to the fact that this is what we're doing for 30 days.
That's right. That's right. The other piece too, and people always do, you're right, people focus on the physical piece, but there's a huge mental piece to it too. And if you got the mental piece dialed in, I believe you can just, you can cross a lot off your bucket list.
Yeah, I was just about
Um,
to ask. You talked about the physical preparation. You talked about the equipment preparation. I was just going to ask, what was the mental preparation like? And so, what did that look like for you? How did you do that? How did you mentally prepare yourself? I know the mistakes I made on the Camino, and that if I ever do it again, I'm like, oh, I need to be thinking this. What was that for you?
mhm. Yeah. So I love that question because I'm also a therapist, right? So I work a lot with performance and, mindset and things like that. So for me, it was I just wasn't going to quit, and we even with the group, my friends going in, we had this kind of deal at the beginning that I wasn't going to quit. If anybody wanted to get off the trail, there was lots of access points people get off the trail. We had planned, right, for that. But I just had that 100 miles in my mind and I just wasn't going to quit. There was one day about day 4, which was a really tough day. I was really feeling it, really feeling the fatigue. I hadn't slept well the night before. It's pretty grouchy. We had a lot of miles to cover and a lot of hills, a lot of elevation. So that was the tough day. And that's when you really get down to it's a step at a time. So I'm gonna, you know, and you're going up these hills and you're thinking, okay, I'm gonna get to that tree. I'm going to get to that rock. I'm going to get, and then before you know it, you've summited, right? You've got up the hill or whatever. Take a few extra breaks, making sure you get enough water. That's huge. Like water with some electrolytes in it can really help kind of boost your mood a little bit. But yeah, you just got to get up and do it. It's not negotiable.
Yeah, and I imagine it's probably like who you bring along with you. I remember walking the Camino, and there was this guy that I walked with a couple days in a row, and we would be going up hills, and we'd think that we were at the top and that there couldn't be any more hills. And every time he's like, "Oh, this is the last one," like totally nonchalantly. And after like the fifth or sixth time that happened, I'm like, "Could you just stop saying that? That's not helpful." So, how was it with you and your friends traveling in that way? Had you
Yeah.
done it before? Was this a new experience, and how that dynamic work for you all?
So we had hiked the year before. We did about 50 miles up in the Pictured Rock area up in Michigan. So we had done a pretty decent hike before. We don't whine. There's no whining. There's no complaining, right? That's kind of
There's
all we
no
have,
whining and
right? No
hiking.
whining, no complaining. And in my head, this comes from trail running. There's no trudging, right? You're not allowed to. I am not allowed to kind of trudge up the hill and just like really give my body that dragging energy, right? So
Hmm.
I don't allow myself to trudge.
Here at the Crossing It Off podcast, we are passionate about inspiring you in your bucket list lifestyle and empowering you to live out your list. We offer many resources to assist you in your bucket list journey, such as web resources in the show notes, bucket list mentoring services, my book Live Out Your Lists, a private Facebook group for you to share your bucket list success stories with others, and more. All of these can be found at crossingitoffpodcast.com. Find the resource that fits your need so that you can live out your list. Now back to the show.
So I am mindful of posture, even if, I'm really feeling it. I really do no trudging. There's no trudging and celebrate the hills. So there were some tough days, there were some tough moments. We had a couple of some really struggles with feet and blisters, not me personally, but some of the crew. But again, they are awesome women, and we did it. Yeah.
Nice. So tell us some of the highlights from this trip. You were probably doing 16 to 20 miles a day almost at least.
Yes.
And
Yes,
so
we were.
besides like the struggle of just making it like we just talked about, what were some of the highlights of it? What were some of the things that you were like, I'm never going to forget this?
Yeah, so there were two that come to mind. One of them was just the most beautiful spot that we had to camp one night with just the gushing, because the water was really high. It was kind of like mid-spring, right? So there was a lot of water and a lot of water flow. And we spent the night close to this beautiful outcropping of rocks, and got up in the morning and kind of climbed some of the boulders and sat by the river. And it was just, there's huge pines and this massive blue sky. We had amazing weather too. We had amazing weather, and it was just beautiful. So and that night, like when you kind of getting out of the tent, you have to pee or something, and you look up and there's just a pitch black sky with these amazing stars. I mean, just incredible. So that was one kind of memory that comes to mind. And the other one is because there was so much water, there are a lot of bridges
Mm.
kind of out that had been swept away in this kind of this torrential rain that they had just a week or so before. So some of our bridges were washed away. So we had a couple of detours, and then we actually did have to do a pretty high, fast river crossing with where the bridge had been washed away. That was pretty
I
hairy. So
imagine.
it took us a minute. It took us a minute, and I stood on the bank. We had to kind of hop these big rocks, like hop these big boulders with a lot of fast water. And of course, we got the packs and everything.
Hmm.
And we all had our, you know, we all had our separate ways of getting across. Somebody got in and went boulder to boulder. Sally has super long legs, so she was like able to like stretch and hop across. And I tell you, I froze. Like I'm kind of the fearless one of the group, but I stood there on that bank, and I just like, holy shit, I am not gonna be able to cross this thing. I mean, my just like that deer in the headlights for a minute. I was able to take a couple of breaths and get my head back on, and obviously was able to make the crossing, and it was fine. But that was a pretty hairy moment for sure. Yeah.
So take us to the moment you get to the exit of the trailhead, like the last spot. You're walking up to that point. There's probably somebody waiting for you in a car or whatever to greet you. But what were you thinking in your head as you're with your girls walking into that trailhead to
Yeah.
and trips over?
Yeah, so we ended up in one of the state parks along the way, and that's where we put the car. Right, we had the car there waiting as we ended. And honestly, we met some lovely people at the end that they were taking our photo, and had just they were celebrating with this kind of 100-mile kind of completion. And I have to tell you, there was a part of me that just wanted to get up and do it all over again. It was
Hmm.
like I was sad that it was over, and I just didn't want it to end. And there was a part of me that's just like, I could just go do that all over again. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
if AI explodes like they say it's going to, maybe we'll all have a lot of free time to be able to just do it again. So, how about you afterwards? You've had this on your bucket list, you've crossed it off, you've completed it. What was, looking back, something that was transformational for you through that experience that carried on in your life afterwards?
Yeah. So I think one thing is really seeing that I can live with a lot less and be
Mhm.
pretty comfortable. right? I can be really comfortable with a lot less. And it's an amazing feeling to be able to carry what you need for, 5 or 6 days on your back and not to have to go to a store or a gas station and just be okay, right? Be okay with the discomfort, be okay with what you got, having to make do. That is a really powerful, for me, that's a really powerful feeling, right? Of that kind of accomplishment, right? I mean, it really builds confidence, really, really builds confidence and just proves, you can do with a lot less. Yeah.
How has
Yeah.
that shown up in your life? Can you give us an instance where you're like, oh, this I was able to do this because I did that other thing?
Yeah. So I tend to be kind of a minimalist. So I'm really even more mindful about that. I'm really even more mindful about what I buy, what I put my resources in, what I put in my body. I mean, I mean, I ate rice and beans every day there, for 5 days, continue to do that. So I live simply, I eat simply, and I think I'm actually better off and healthier for it. Yeah, so that's how that has transformed into my everyday life for
Yeah,
sure.
going back to the Camino, there's always the question of how big of a pack I should take. And I always say,
Mm.
take the smallest pack you can find. Because as Americans, we just fill our packs with stuff that we may or may not even need. And if you get a 30-liter pack, you're not going to be able to fill it with stuff. You got to limit yourself, or you're just going to, because that's what I did. I think I had like 18 kilos or 15 kilos in my backpack. And it was just, I
Mm.
just learned it was way too, I just didn't need it. There's
Mhm.
so much in that
Yeah.
pack I didn't need. So I understand that very well from my own experience.
Yeah. So that motto, right? That less is more. I use that language a lot.
Mm,
In session, I use it with clients. I use it with myself. I use it with, just less is more. Less words, right? Less
hmm
stuff. Less food. Less. I mean, less is really more. I mean, there's a real magic, I think, to that kind of simplicity.
For sure. Kate, what's something else that's on your bucket list that you'd like to cross off?
I'm turning 60 in April.
Okay.
So I have the Camino. I'm doing the Camino coastal route. I have
Okay.
that on my that to celebrate that 60. So I'm looking forward to that. I'd like to go back and do the final 100 of
Hmm.
the Superior Hiking Trail. So that would be where we started to the Canadian border. That's a little more rugged, a little even more wilderness, a little more endurance, peaks, etc. It goes right through the
Mhm.
Sawtooth. So I'd like to go and complete that last kind of phase of the Superior Hiking Trail. So that is on my list. I've got the Laurel Highlands Trail in July, the 70 miles to go to do that in Pennsylvania. I'm looking forward to that. I laugh with my friends. My bucket list is so long. I'm not going to live long enough to get it all done. So yeah,
So do you have actual plans for the Camino? And you said it was the Portuguese route, right?
yes, I'm doing the coastal route of the Portuguese. Yeah, yes. So I have intended not to plan it much, right? Like have a minimal plan.
hmm
But I'm yeah, getting ready to
But
book
you have
tickets.
dates, right? You have dates,
I
right?
have dates. Yeah,
Okay, good. Awesome. Good for you.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
I have
Uh,
I have my passport, I have the passport, I have the guidebook, I have dates, the dates and all that stuff. Yeah, but I'm gonna do minimal planning on that, I think.
yeah, it's a good plan to have a little plan when you do the
Okay.
any route. And like I said, you don't need much because
Okay. So that's
if you need it, you can buy it. So
okay.
it's not like the Superior. I mean, you're literally walking through towns every 5 kilometers or something, so you can get whatever you want. So yeah, congratulations on that. That'll be fun for sure for
Yeah, I'm
you.
looking forward
Yeah,
to it. I'm looking forward
excellent,
to it.
awesome. Can you share with us where folks can find you and connect with you online?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm also an author, so I have a couple of books out there, and one is called Never Too Late, right, which is literally all about, get out there. It spotlights 7 later in life athletes, hikers and runners. It's actually a really cool book. So you can find that on my website or Amazon. My website is And obviously, you know where Amazon is. Everybody knows where Amazon is.
Yep.
I have a Facebook group which really supports later in life people like me, later in life people that really want to get out and get some adventures. And we do a lot of motivation and inspiration. That's called the Back of the Pack Athletes, and you can find that on Facebook. I know that you'll have some of these links in the show notes.
Yes.
So I actually have a little hiking guide, a little hiking pocket
Nice.
guide that we focused on women, hiking, running, and backpacking. That is free. If you want to go to my website, you can download that no cost, and lots of tips and tricks and strategies. And also it helps, there's some guidance for the people left at home, right? Because
Hmm.
sometimes we're out on all these adventures, but we forget we've got loved ones at home that are really worried and really nervous and really scared and really think we're going to be eaten by a bear or something horrible going to happen. So there's some help and guidance for the people left at home too.
That's awesome. I love it. I hope people connect with you and download that. That's excellent. Kate, thank you so much for being here. Bueno Camino. I forget how this.
Bueno Camino,
Well, it's
yes.
Bueno Camino on the Portuguese route. So Bueno Camino and enjoy your time. The Camino is always an amazing thing. So I wish you well on that, and I appreciate you being here today.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure and all the best to you.